Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's Monday afternoon. Feels like Monday morning to me, but we'll get back to that. And I'm here with Acsom Rabbani. We're obviously going to be focusing on the weekend's events. Still a wee bit of time in the transfer window, Acsom, to make a difference. And from what I'm seeing, and I know it's early doors and seasons can sometimes start well and taper off and everything else. But from what I'm seeing and some of the passages they play and some of the performances that we've seen against Hibs at the weekend, I truly do believe, as the tagline says, we're not far away from being the real deal. Acsom, we'll start off with the game at the weekend. How did you enjoy it? What was your takeaways from the match?
Yeah, a really enjoyable game again, especially in the first half. I thought we played some brilliant stuff. Kind of similar theme to last week against Hibs. Really fast out the blocks, scoring the early goals, two up inside 15, 20 minutes. And again, I was thinking this could be as many as we want here. I'm just really enjoying watching us play at the moment. I think some of the intricate link-up play between midfield, forward, likes of Greg Taylor getting involved. It was really enjoyable to watch. You feel like we're playing at a right speed and tempo that we didn't often see last season at all. And it's just carrying on from where we've been pre-season going forward. Obviously, Hibs then came in. Well, not even came into it. The goal came out of nowhere. It was a really good header, and that kind of slowed us down a wee bit. But I thought, on the whole, really professional job. Main thing was getting through into the next round, but I thought we did that with a bit of style as well. Obviously, second half, I think we're seeing a common theme that when we start making the changes and the subs around about the 60-minute mark, things get a wee bit sloppier. And I think that we've seen that in a few of the games. Now, I don't know if that's just, like you say, just a timing thing. It's early on in the season, or more probably what we've been saying all along is when we see some of the changes coming on, the depth is it beyond the first team isn't maybe as strong. Obviously Adam Ida came on for his debut, and we'll talk about that. And I thought Bernardo did well when he came on, but more so the wide players. When Yang and Palma come on, I feel like the play gets a bit more sloppier, and it was natural. But I think on the whole, really encouraging, really good performance. We're just good to watch right now.
Yeah, I would agree with all that, and I think the point you made about Yang, for example, and it's not about focusing on one player and trying to give him a hard time, but I do think you see a drop. You see a drop in intensity and
decision making. That's the main thing. I think that's where Forrest and Kuhn yesterday were, again, both of them really, really good on the ball, making the right decisions, trying things. Not always it's going to come off, but I just feel when Yang and Palma came on, it's just like you say, it's knowing when to pass, knowing when to take a guy on. But look, that's a kind of minor gripe. On the whole, a lot to be encouraged about.
No, you're right. I'm very positive. I really am, Acsom. We're going to be talking about recruitment. Of course we are. We're in a transfer window. We're looking ahead to a Champions League campaign. We're going to mention it, but I don't think we'll focus entirely on it, even though I'm looking at this side and I'm thinking, we're just that wee bit short. Now, last night I was at the tremendous venue in Glasgow called Gracie's, and it was night 3. I don't know how people do, 2 years residencies at Vegas. I'm 3 nights and I'm done in, right? But it was brilliant. It was fantastic. Loved it. It was Johan Mjällby and Lubo. I'm going to share a few stories because I've said this before, Acsom, I'm a sponge when it comes to Celtic. I want to know everything I possibly can. So when you get little nuggets of information that you haven't heard before, then I will share it. So that is the reason why over the weekend I was a wee bit busy. So a big thank you to Chris and to Sean yesterday for running the post-match. I was on the pre-match and the halftime bulletins, but they guys ran and professionally ran it. And I was able to listen to it on the way through to Glasgow. Ewan Boy Martin was there, the big fella. Yesterday was a total joy to watch, especially the first half. If we can keep our midfield 3 this window, then we can have a great season and do good in the Champions League too. I want to start off with this point because I'm looking at that midfield 3. You've mentioned Bernardo, and I agree with you. He came on, and I just thought, I'm so happy that he came back to the club. I like everything about him, and I think there's room for improvement and development, which we'll see under Brendan. But that midfield 3 is as strong as I can remember for some time. And I'm looking at Rio Atati, and I don't think he's hit that top form yet.
No,
I thought he looked better yesterday. But if he has I don't know if he's going to have a season like Matt O'Reilly did last season, but if he has a kind of vintage campaign, and we're able to keep O'Reilly. Let me dream for a moment, Acsom. We're able to keep O'Reilly. I agree with you, and this could be frightening because that, for me, is the heartbeat of the team.
You're right. I was watching it yesterday, and I said the same to my dad. We're like the three of them. I thought Hatate, like you said, he's not hit full form yet. I still feel like he's still getting there. But Matt O'Reilly, Callum McGregor, and Rio Hatate all in full form is as good as. Try to think back, but yeah, you're going quite a bit back. Before we've got a midfield trio as dynamic and offer different things. Matt O'Reilly gets better week on week. The more I'm watching him, his weight of pass, his game intelligence. Thought Callum McGregor was really sharp again yesterday, and as you mentioned, Bernardo coming in supplements that. So it's the more the weeks are going on, the more you're hearing stories that Atlanta have dropped their interest. They've got fed up of their low ball offers. It's the way they've gone about it. Obviously, they're miles off the figure that we're looking for. So it doesn't matter how many bids you're going to put in. You can put in 10 bids if you want, but if you're 4 or 5 million off what the player's worth to the club, then there's no point. But the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking if we can hold on to Matt O'Reilly, it's going to make such a difference because he genuinely is, I feel, the heartbeat now of why we're playing so well. Obviously, there's not a number of good players in there and a number of players on form, but I think everything now seems to go through Matt O'Reilly, whereas before it all went through Callum McGregor. Obviously, it still does, but I think they're taking equal ownership and equal kind of presence in that team where they're dictating things, they're dictating how we play. So it's becoming more and more important that we actually maybe just try and keep a hold of him. Obviously, we all know it's not completely in our hands. It's down to the player as well. But by all accounts, he's not somebody that's going to down tools or absolutely, kick up a fuss. If his valuation is not met by the club, I've got no doubts that he'll be happy to stick around until it is and give us another half or full season. And if we can do that, we're in really good shape in that midfield.
Yeah, and again, I think last season I mentioned quite a few times, I seen we can talk about the guys that stand out, and it's the entertainment value at times, the goals, the assists, and we can go through entire 1 hour Monday shows and not mention the gaffer on the park. I mean, Callum McGregor, the captain whose consistency levels are incredible. They really are. To the point where, and I think this happens a lot in football and with football fans, sometimes we take him for granted, but he is just that constant in that midfield engine room. And I think he allows players like Hatate and players like O'Reilly to express himself more freely. The shape is pretty obvious to see now, isn't it? Where he's kind of sitting back. And I'll go back to something that Alan Morrison has spoken about probably over the last 2 seasons, where he's saying that there's a regression, not in the quality of McGregor, but just physically in Callum McGregor. And it's just so natural with a footballer whereby they're not going to be as attacking. And I think Scott Brown was a classic example of that, changing his game to suit physically where he was, going into his kind of mid-30s. And I hope that Callum McGregor can go into that spell of his life and his football career as a Celtic player, because already this season he has the opportunity, I seem, to break records in terms of, he's going to get into that 500 club that I keep banging on about. He's right up there already in terms of the most decorated Celts. If he keeps going for another 3 or 4 seasons, he's going to end up probably the second in terms of appearances in the history of Celtic Football Club. It's sensational, isn't it? Consistency.
And it's why the decision to obviously retire from international football is going to be Celtic's game. As much as I enjoy seeing him for Scotland, and he's been an effective player as well, but it's well documented how many games Callum McGregor plays. He's up there in terms of probably the top 3 or 4 that's played the most games in Europe, across the European League. Each season, you're approaching 60 games a season, and he rarely misses a game. So for us, that's going to help us if he can, give even extra to Celtic. And he's such a clever player that you're right. Even with age, the natural regression, as you mentioned, that comes, I don't think it'll impact him as much because of his football intelligence. He knows what he wants to do before he's even got the ball. He's that clever that it doesn't need a lot of running power for Callum McGregor to be effective. Obviously, in Europe, it's a bit different, and we'll see how that pans out. We've all been maybe crying out for another kind of defensive mid to help him in there for certain games in Europe. But as far as this season started, he's looking back to his best. I know last season probably wasn't his dynamic best at times, but when it really counted, he showed up. But this season he started on, consistently again. The Callum McGregor we all know, absolutely bossing games, and when he's complemented with quality such as Rio and Matt, it's why we're such a joy to watch at the moment. And I think Greg Taylor's got to take a lot of credit for that as well, because he's almost playing as a midfielder, and it's just we're getting so many overloads in that midfield, and it's everyone seems to be really enjoying their football. That's a noticeable difference from this time last year. There's none of this deliberation on the ball, slow, backwards, sideways. The movement you're seeing Forrest going out the centre forward position, Maida then coming out wide. Everyone's rotating. And it's, even if you look at a lot of our goals, very similar. Runs in behind, again, stuff that we hadn't seen for quite a while. It's something that we're not going to get too overboard about just now, because it's early stages and we've only played a couple of teams who haven't been great, but the signs are good anyway.
Yeah, they are. Some great points from yourself, Acsom. Some brilliant points coming in from the troops in the comment section. We'll get as many of you coming in as possible. And if I see a brand new name or a brand new avatar, you're coming up as well. I don't want everybody thinking I've got my favourite that has been suggested in the past. I'm going to share a few stories with you over the weekend regarding Lubo and Big Johan as well as we go through. We do these live events on a regular basis. We've done them all over the place, actually, over the last few years. So at the weekend, we were in Cowie, Greenock and Glasgow. But if you're looking at your local CSC or the venue and you think, why not bring a player down here? We've not had someone for a while. Just give us a shout. We can arrange it. I'm pretty happy to travel as well. So there we go. We've got a great Acsom team who can hold the fort if I miss a game or two. Jungle Lion, first in. Correct, 2 to 3 first-team starters added to this team. The sky's the limit. And that's what I'm thinking about. Sometimes, I think we are like on the verge of greatness. Sometimes I get that feeling. And it's almost as if, it's that. And I've used the analogy before of Frank Bruno fighting Mike Tyson. And he does a wobble. He takes a wobble, Tyson, and Bruno didn't follow it up. He could have knocked him out. Sometimes I feel like that with Celtic. We're there. And all we need to do is just add that wee bit, and we don't do it, and we regress a wee bit, or we take a wee step back. And there's been moments like that in my Celtic supporting life. I go back to the centenary season. We win the league. And at that point, Rangers are spending money, big money. And I don't think we followed it up. The following season, we didn't follow up, albeit we won the Scottish Cup. Wee Joe scored the winner. We didn't follow up. Our pre-season business was Ian Andrews and Alan Ruff, And we're in the European Cup at that time.
Yeah.
And we do not kick on. I think back to the Seville era.
That's the one I remember. That's the one, that's the glaring one, because obviously everyone talks about it. You look at Porto, who we play in the final, and what do? They go on and win the Champions League the next season. What do? We sign Michael Gray, was it?
Yeah.
That team, again, we were close. We were so close. We were more than a match for a very talented, clearly very good Porto team. And all it needed was 3 or 4 additional signings to really push on. And I think we beat Barcelona the following season, but then fell short against Villarreal. But that was the start. That was the start of the decline, wasn't it? And then the following season, we were pretty poor in Europe. So it's happened, like you said, the Centenary season, and then Seville, and it kind of happens regularly at regular junctures. Really, really push on. Look at Gordon Strachan twice in the last 16 consecutively. But again, did we really push on from that? When Neil Lennon got us to the last 16 against Juventus, we thought that we had the nucleus of a good side then. Again, didn't really push on. So it's something that we see quite often. And again, I think we're at that stage right now. You look at the team, you look at the manager, and it's exciting. It's there for us, but it just needs more, because otherwise, as it currently stands, I think we'll fall short. But you add 2 or 3 in there, and there's no guarantees, but you'll at least feel like you've given yourself a right good go, because the familiarity is there now with a lot of the players, with the manager, and it'll galvanise the players as well. It'll galvanise the players that are there already. They won't look at it as, oh no, our positions are under threat. If they've got anything about them, they'll use that to enhance their own performances, and it'll mean nobody's comfortable And we're going to have that many games and that many competitions, hopefully, that everyone's going to get a fair share of it. It's not going to be like a small nucleus of players being used. So you're right. We've got 10, 11 days to go. I think guys in mind, this performance probably means that a striker's probably not on that list. And you know what? I don't mind that as long as a winger's then bought, because you can't be relying on him in two positions to cover, because then an injury is all it takes there, and you're short again. But yeah, maybe a striker's not number one priority. Depending on obviously the Kyogo situation, I guess we'll touch on that as well as to what he does with his shoulder. But yeah, we're 3 or 4 short right now, and here's hoping that gets addressed.
No, you're right, and again, I've mentioned that Neil Lennon run rather in the Champions League the last time we got to the last 16, and we followed it up with selling Wanyama and Hooper and Kelvin Wilson and Joe Ledley, 4 guys who were first picks in that team. Yeah. So that's frustrating, and I think in most recent times it was probably after the treble win under Ange, and people might say, you brought in Brendan Rodgers, though. Yeah, but in terms of transfers, we did not kick on. And this is what we're now talking about. And I think that I want to also speak about the record of Brendan Rodgers signing since he came in, probably taking it from January and then taking it from this. And you're looking at the guys that he's brought in, Kuhn, Ida, Schmeichel, Bernardo, and you're thinking, that's not a bad record at the moment. So, people have been critical of Brendan Rodgers in the transfer market previously. And it was brought up at the weekend in relation to how good shape we're in now compared to last season. And I know that we were doing well at the end of the season, Acsom, but see if you rewind back to the corresponding fixture last season when Kilmarnock knocked us out 1-0, it was a horrible day. Celtic's starting 11 was Joe Hart, Tony Ralston, Greg Taylor, Lagerbielke and Nawrocki. The midfield 3 was Odin Holm, Callum McGregor and Matt O'Reilly. And up top was Maeda, Kyogo and Abada. So you look at that team and you think to yourself, well, the glaring part of that team that was too weak was the central defensive area. And, it was a costly couple of errors, to be honest, because they guys are not going to be playing for Celtic under Rodgers. I think the decision's been made. We can all see it. Mm-hmm. Are we holding back because they're still on the books? I know we're cash rich. I get all that. But are we holding back? Are we going to end up bringing in a loan so that we don't have so many centre-halves on the books? It feels that way to me.
Yeah, it does, because historically that's what we tend to do. We wait till, regardless of how cash-rich we are, we wait till an outgoing before we then bring someone in. Mm-hmm. With the Guards, I think we'll get a left-back loan. I've got a feeling that seems to be the chatter. And I think, Greg Taylor's one that divides opinion. I think we all recognise the job he does and how effective he started the season brilliantly. But I think the concern with Greg Taylor comes when we face up in the Champions League. So look, I don't know whether for centre back it will be a loan as well, because remember we've still got Kobayashi on the books as well. So there's 3 essentially that aren't even near the first team squad at the moment. Welsh we'll probably keep a hold of. So you're looking at Carter Vickers, Scales, Welsh, and then you've got 3 that are seen surplus to requirements. So we definitely need somebody in. But because we've got so many on the books, I wonder if it is a case of trying to offload first, which again, just is, to me, it's not very effective. It's not very great forward planning, because that you've got, as you say, we're cash rich. We know we could probably get rid of these players. There's been offers, there's been interest in them before, whether it's Welsh or Lagerbielke from Italy. It just smacks me of, again, just being reactive rather than proactive. We should be aiming to get these positions addressed, and then you can get rid of the players. It's not like we need the money. It's not like the club across the city. It's a completely different situation we're in. I think it's more, again, I think Rodgers is wanting a certain type of player, and I think he's wanting it from a certain market, which is England. And I think that's what's going on here. I think he's waiting to see who he can get, and he's wanting to get a certain calibre, and he feels he's only going to probably be able to get that in the last, dying embers of the window, where all sorts are going on. You've seen the last week, things have really ramped up in England, so I wonder if that's what's going on here. But I do think we'll see a lone left-back. Centre-back, I would ideally want... The thing with loans is, unless we've got an option to buy, you're just kicking the can down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's how I feel about it. And but we have used the loan to buy
effectively.
system very good, very well, yeah. And you're right. And again, we've been linked to a number of different candidates, if you like, and Owen Beck's name keeps cropping up. I think people are rightly saying that he's very similar in stature to Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor, see the thing with Taylor, right? And when you mentioned him there, I was watching him at the weekend. I'm just thinking to myself, he does a right good job for Celtic, but I do think it's a domestic thing versus the Champions League. And I do think that, I go into every season thinking, well, who am I happy with going into the Champions League? And I know I've banged this drum quite a few times. It's normally half a dozen members of the squad, I think. They're Champions League players. Yeah. And I'm qualifying that by saying I don't think they're good enough to win the Champions League or play for Real Madrid or whoever, right? But in terms of Celtic going into the games, I'm happy with usually half a dozen guys. I've then got reservations about a few of them. I'm then looking on the bench and thinking, wow, that's really thin on quality. And Taylor is one of the guys that's never made it into that bracket where I'm going into a game, let's say, against Real Madrid a couple of seasons ago, and I'm thinking, right, I don't think he's at this level. Is that harsh? Do you think that's been harsh? Because I do rate him. Taylor. I think he does a great job.
I think I'm in the same boat with Taylor. I rate him, and I think he's been, over the last couple of years, he's really grown on me. I think he's played a really important role in that Ange team when we were doing the rebuild. I thought he took on one of the kind of leadership roles in there. I know he gets some stick for how moany he is, but I think that's, I think it can be useful as well at times. And I think when he's on form, and you look at him, not last season, but the season before, one of our top performers then, and the way he's playing now. But you're right, I think domestically, when we've got so much of the ball, when he's playing that inverted role again, which he's doing a lot of now, his weight of pass, his passing skills are brilliant. It's more, I think, physically. I think in the Champions League, you see the speed of some of these players. We've all seen it firsthand. When we're up, you like say Juranovic smoked by Mudryk, in the Champions League, and he's rapid. So this is not just a slight on Greg Taylor, but in general, I think our team can be a bit physically undercooked when it comes to European football. You just look at the kind of stamina and speed and strength, and I think that's something across the board that we can work on. But it does seem left back, especially as an area that's been getting targeted in Europe for quite a few years. I speak about it a lot, but I remember the Bodo Glimt game has been the kind of eye opener for me, where I thought we had quite a good team then, and I was quite confident going into that team. And just a couple of moments of quality down that right hand side from, I can't remember the name, the winger for Bodo now, but he was a good player. But he really took Greg Taylor to the cleaners that night. And we've seen it, a kind of recurring theme, that he does get caught out in Europe, and whether it's he's not the fastest player, he's not the tallest, obviously, and it's just something that I think that's an area where if we're going to buy a left back or loan a left back, I think it should be someone of a different kind of stature rather than a similar. If we're going to get an Owen Beck, yes, for the future to maybe replace Greg Taylor if he's not going to sign that new contract, if we're not going to offer a new contract. But I think we should have an alternative option, the same way that we've got two different kind of strikers now. And as Brendan Rodgers says, it's two first choice strikers. But they're completely different, and they can offer different things. I think that should be the same in left back. We've got Greg Taylor there, who for certain games brilliant domestically, but in Europe or even just generally, you want someone competing with him who can offer different attributes that he might not have.
Yeah, it's a kind of change in mindset as well. It might be difficult for a player to know that they're not going to start every game, but they're going to get minutes in virtually every game, because everybody thinks, right, I want to be a starter rather than come on for 30 minutes. But Rodgers has said in the past that the final 30 minutes is as important as the first 30 minutes. And it is a shift in mindset, I think. Thank you on the Instagram for everybody starting to join on there. I know it's a relatively new thing for Acsom. Johnny Mac 7404, best wishes from the USA. And of course, we do have Ryan Pearce as part of the Acsom team from the United States, giving us his take from afar. Really keen to get your comments coming through, so keep it coming. Over 1,000.
Solbakken was the name of the winger, and I think he went on to play at Roma. I'm not sure if he's still there or he's on loan, but I don't think it's fully worked out for him. But it's a player that we were linked with as well on the back of that, and it was someone that I thought was quite good. But just a point you made there about the 60-30 minutes. What the start of this season reminds me of, and I've said it before, is kind of Ange's second season, where we're almost finishing teams off pretty early on. If you remember, there was a lot of games like that then, where we come out really quick and teams, and then we kind of ease off around the 60-minute mark. But what we had back then, which was different, and I think it's something that we should be aiming towards, was that depth. Because if you're then bringing on Aaron Moy or Giakoumakis or Abada, you weren't really replacing them with weaker players. You know, the strength was coming on.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Brendan probably wants now, is when 60 minutes are up and he's making those changes. Now we've obviously got Adamida, Bernardo, but if we sprinkle that across the team with wingers as well, it just means that teams can't get a break, because you take off some players after 60, but we're going again because these other, and I think that's where that squad depth really comes into it. Everyone's getting a fair share of game time and a fair crack at really having a contribution in that game, rather than it just being for 10-15 minutes at the end while the game peters out.
Oh, without a doubt. And you're right, you used to get that second wind under Ange, and it was relentless. Really imagine being in the opposition team and you've been run ragged, and then Abada comes on to give you round two. I do think we need to get to that point. But on the subject of wingers, I want to bring up Nicholas Kuhn because any win's a win on Acsom, and I tipped him to be one of the stars this season. And
you're not going to drop that one, eh?
I'm going to keep bringing this up, right? And I just think he's Celtic's number 10. It's a special number at most clubs. And when I was looking at his record, 24 years old, he's talking about having aspirations still to get that elusive international recognition. He's had it at underage all the way up, but he wants international recognition. This season so far, 3 goals in 3 games and 2 assists. That's a sensational start. And he's taken that form on from the pre-season. And in total for Celtic now, 21 appearances, 6 goals and 5 assists. And I think that when you're, again, looking at the record of Brendan Rodgers' signings, and by the way, let's not forget, Nat Phillips was definitely Brendan. Kuhn is in there, and he really is coming onto his own. How impressed are you? Because I know some people say, we wish he would go outside more often than coming inside. I think that can come. I think he's been very, very effective. And again, yesterday, I thought he was brilliant.
Oh, I was raving about him yesterday, and I'm surprised it's taken me 27 minutes to actually mention him, because it's night and day watching him from last season. I think every time he gets the ball now, you feel like something's going to happen. And I think that's what we've been crying out from our wingers for a year now. We've not really replaced Jota in that sense. None of our wingers had that air of sparkle. And I'm not saying he's up there at that level yet or anything like it, but he's adding in the numbers now. He's getting the goals and assists. Yeah, you look at his 2 in pre-season as well, which were absolute quality. And as you mentioned, there are still things I think he can do better, but I've got no doubts that he will, and he'll probably be getting coached in it and working on it, such as maybe getting a shot off a wee bit earlier or mixing it up. And he did it a few times yesterday. I seen him in the second half going on the outside as well. And he's got that pace and trickery to, at least domestically so far, he's got the beating of most of the fullbacks. And he loves that wee chip ball, which I don't know, he's got a good few assists like that now. And it's a delight to watch. It was a brilliant ball for Maeda's goal. He looks stronger. I know there was always talk of that 9 kg that he lost, but you can actually see it now that he's put it on in mass and strength. He wins the ball back quick. There are times where he's lost it and he's winning it back, shrugs defenders off. There was a point where he made a really good driving through the middle of the pitch and got brought down. I'm just really enjoying what he's bringing to the table right now. And I think he's made himself an automatic starter, which we couldn't have said last season. We were all debating which of the wingers are going to do it. Him and James Forrest both have started the season well, complement each other well. And as you say, he's adding in the numbers now. And if he carries that on, then he's going to be able to go on to one heck of a season. But the biggest compliment I can give him is, when he's got the ball, you're kind of looking forward and you're on the edge of the seats waiting to see what he can do. And that's for a while.
Listen, we've been very critical in the past, looking at Celtic's recruitment policy and having this reluctance to go over a certain kind of fee. And that fee, the kind of the highest end was like the £4 million mark. We're signing a lot of players under £4 million. And Nicholas Kuhn was only about £3 million. But I think what he's showing is that there are occasions where a player can come in at that price and still be an effective acquisition. And for me, this season, it's opened up for him. He's had that brilliant pre-season. People go on about, pre-season friendlies, they mean nothing and all that. They can give somebody a momentum. They can give somebody an opening and a wee breakthrough, and then it carries on into the season. And that's what it's done for Nicholas Kuhn. A couple of wee stories coming to mind from the last 3 nights. And I've got to say this, right? This isn't about name dropping. I seen this on a comment the other day. You're always name dropping. I'll tell you something, right? If I'm ever in the presence of an ex-Celt, I'm like a wee boy. It's like I just want to know everything that's happened and a sponge for information. So I'm on a stage with Johan and Lubo, and what's happened is, right, he's talking, big Johan's talking about, obviously, comes over maybe once or twice a year, I see him, right? And there's certain people that he's got good friendships with in Glasgow, and he goes to certain restaurants and he enjoys his time when he's over. So he was in Glasgow yesterday. Wee Lubo goes to the game. Johan was with friends. He went for a bite to eat. And he's in this restaurant, and all night he goes, look, as a footballer, very early on, you figure out when somebody's trying to size you up, if they're going to come over and maybe ask for a photo or an autograph or something. He goes, and there's this guy, and he keeps looking over, and he says, it's fine. It's no problem. I mean, at least he's not coming in to interrupt my meal and all this. So eventually, the time comes, the moment occurs where Johan's finished and he's about to leave the restaurant. The guy makes his move, comes up to him and goes, it's you, isn't it? It's you. You played football. And big Johan's like, it's great to get a wee bit of the old stroking of the ego. He goes, are you over to see your son Casper? He thought it was Peter Schmeichel. He thought it was Peter Schmeichel. Brilliant. And I was like, what? Did you just go along with it? I think he just went along with it. He probably signed Peter Schmeichel on the guy's napkin or something, right? But that was big Johan. And one of the questions that was asked last night, and it's a generic type question, of course, is Henrik Larsson the best player you ever played with, right? And he said he is. And he actually went on this quite a long story in terms of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. A lot of people would think Zlatan would be the best player that he's ever played with. And he explained why he wasn't. And he explained why Henrik was a better player. And he accepts that when he played with Zlatan, he maybe hadn't hit his peak as such. But he said, Henrik, in terms of the complete player, was better than Zlatan. Listen, wow. I'm taking it. It, right? The flip side of that one with wee Lubo. What a gentleman, honestly. I mean, like yourself, I love the guy, like a genius, a magician, a gift from God, right? And you're sitting there with him, and every so often during the night, you're kind of thinking, I'm sitting with Lubo. This is this is insane, right? And he's sitting with a wee pint of Guinness, and every time he takes a sip, he's saying to the crowd, cheers, and they're all cheering. He could say anything and they would cheer. But he tells this incredible story. There's a wee thread going through the night, right? I know I'm digressing, but at least it's Celtic chat, ladies and gents, right? So there's a wee thread through the night, and it was basically his dream was to play in the Champions League, right? So he came into international football pretty late. He was managed by Joseph Venglos at Czechoslovakia. We spoke about the fact that both Lubo and Dr. Joe were written off by the Scottish media when they came to this country. And, Dr. Joe was called a blank check. I think that's what the headline was, right? And, of course, we should have signed Spencer instead of Lubo, according to some... Your mate,
My mate Hugh.
Aye, we should have signed him. So we were talking all about that and stuff, and he was like, we're discussing the fact that Dr. Joe Venglos was part of the Czechoslovakian management team who won the Euros in 1976. It's not like he just came out of nowhere. World Cup 1990, Lubo's part of the Czechoslovakia side that gets to the quarter-final, and they get beat by Germany, who go on to win the tournament. So we're talking all about that. And wee Lubo was going on about this dream. He wanted to play in the European Cup come Champions League. And what actually happened was he had gone to Saint-Etienne in 1990. He speaks perfect French, and he was going on about the fact, and that's obviously where the Zidane thing comes in, which we'll get back to. So he goes to Saint-Etienne in 1990, and a player called Dragan Stojkovic goes to Marseille in the same year. And some of the older heads will remember Stojkovic playing at Celtic Park for Red Star Belgrade in 1988. It was one of the centenary matches. And he was a sensational player, bit of a cult player, sensational. He's now the manager, isn't he? International. So he's talking about that, and he goes to France, and he's playing brilliantly and everything else. Marseille want to sign him. This is before the days of transfer windows. You can sign players whenever. Marseille want to sign him, I see, 6 months before the Champions League final, which they win.
Yeah.
And they beat AC Milan 1-0. You'll remember they famously topped the group that Rangers were in, 92-93. So they win the tournament. And a lot of people, again, sometimes need reminded, that title was never stripped from Marseille. They are still officially the European Cup winners that year. It was the French national title that got stripped from them because of Bernard Tapie. So he's thinking, wow, that could have been me. And that was his first opportunity missed, and he could have won the European Cup. But what he said was, had I did that, I would never have played for Celtic. He said, so I wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't have this affection and this connection with the Celtic support. The second time, I know this is a bit long-winded, but it was worth it because I never knew any of this. He says that the Swiss champions were Sion. Now, I only really know them from the time they knocked them out of Europe.
that famous 3-0 victory.
That 3-0 victory, because of the paperwork. That worked in our favour a couple of times around about that time.
Twice, aye.
Sion, right? So they sign Lubo Moravcik, and he signs a document. But he had to go through a medical, so I don't know what the situation was with the contract, but he had to go through a medical. So he had broken his leg 6 months previously. And he gets this medical. He had a double training session with Sion the day before, right? His first training session with his new teammates. And the medical comes back. His leg is still broken, right? So the medical team, like, you've got a broken leg, we can't sign you. But bizarrely enough, he's still got a broken leg. They were playing in the Champions League next season, and he misses out. He comes to Celtic. By this time, a veteran, 33 years of age. And we have to win the league under O'Neill to get into the Champions League. You know, he only played one game in the Champions League, Acsom. One game.
For us?
In his entire career. One game.
Is that the Juventus game?
Juventus game.
When he nutmegs Pavel Nedved?
Yes, Nedved. The 4-3 game. That was the only game he ever played. So there you go. There's wee Lubo. The guy was an absolute gift from God. He was well named. And tell me your best memories of Lubo in the comments. What about yourself? What was your best memories, Acsom?
It's hard to look beyond that debut, wasn't it? The 5-1 game, where even just his celebration, it kind of sums him up. I've not met him, but my dad has a couple of times, and any others that meet him kind of say the same. He's the most unassuming guy for how much he's adored by all the Celtic fans. He's one of those guys. He doesn't think too highly of himself. You know, he's just such a down to earth character, as you say, a proper gentleman. So yeah, he brought so many good memories. I remember one time where he controlled the ball with his backside. I don't know if you remember it. It was sublime. His performance in the Champions League against Juventus. Just so many great goals. We spoke about last week, the away goal at Easter Road, left foot, no back lift. He was still, for me, probably one of the greatest entertainers that I've watched. Him and Nakamura, in terms of that kind of, I would say Lubo more so, but Nakamura was another one who kind of brought joy in that sense. But yeah, just an all-round great guy, and a proper Celtic great in terms of the memories he's brought us all. That must have been a privilege to sit in his company.
It was unreal. It was unreal. Let us know your best memories of Lubomir Moravcik in a Celtic jersey. He did speak about his first derby game against Rangers. He played against Dundee, actually. We beat them 6-1. He came just before me, Albie, and then we said, what about the celebration? What was that all about? He goes, it was just Rangers. He just shrugged, But then, as I say, I was with Lubo for 3 nights. So the very first question I asked on night one, I'd never met him before in my life. And I asked him a question. He turned around and goes, I didn't understand a word of that, but I'm going to tell you a story. And I thought, this is going to be a long 3 nights, right? But he was just basically winding me up. So by night 3, I thought, right, I'm going to make an effort here because you've been struggling to understand my Fife vernacular. And so I asked him a question, and I tried my best to ask it in French, which I don't speak. And it was the trapping the ball with his arse question. And he understood it. So I was pretty chuffed with myself. There we go. Jonathan Brown, and I asked him about it. He practiced it at training. He practiced it all the time at training.
Wouldn't surprise you.
Aye, exactly.
Even I remember I was at 7-1 at Fir Park, and he scored a cracking free kick that night as well. Just trying to think back, so many memories of him. But it's good to see he's still in good spirits, and obviously holds Celtic in high esteem as well. And he's one of those, whenever he comes back, the fans fully appreciate him, and it'll be good to get him back at Paradise sometime soon, maybe a half-time draw or something like that.
Yeah, yes, he's an absolute hero, but so humble. Jonathan Brown, we are just a few quality first-team signings away from having a super strong squad. And if we're thinking this, talking of quality and the intrinsic way that Brendan Rodgers kind of goes about his business, he'll be thinking exactly the same. I love the fact that he wants to trim the squad. Non-contributing players for me, move them on. It's football. That's what happens. Move them on and bring in the quality and somebody that's going to actually contribute to the games. Brown Warrior, thank you for the shout. We're now up to 1,100 on the live stream. Give us a big thumbs up. Why, I hear you ask. Basically, it's the algorithm. Give them a thumbs up. Give us a wee comment. Subscribe to the channel. And it just seems to help the whole thing. Barry McCluskey, that's some amount of comments 2 minutes into the podcast. When do folks start posting? You know what it is, Barry? If I'm on the on the money and on my game, I get the stream up nice and early, right? And then I go and get myself a cuppa and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I'm running late, but if it's on nice and early, by the time I come here, sometimes there's 100 comments sitting waiting on us, right? So it's brilliant. The dedication is incredible.
Everyone's in good spirits right now, though, isn't it? It seems that way for now.
It's the Monday. That's why I make the point of having that. It's that Monday vibe. We need to test the mood, Acsom, you and I, on a Monday. And it is good at the moment.
I think it helps as well when the mob across the city are in such shambles as well. I have to admit, I'm quite enjoying all the stuff that's coming out of there right now. They're a right mess.
They are right. And the big thing as well is the fact that maybe in the past some Celtic platforms have been accused of having too much of a focus of on our nearest challengers. And I tend not to. And I don't even think we've touched on it that much when it comes to the stadium and the scenes at the weekend after a second round win against Johnston and all this.
They'll never learn.
No, I know. But one thing that we will discuss, because we've not really had a chance to do it because it happened on Friday after our bulletin, is Brendan Rodgers and the comments he made in relation to the tickets. So I think we'll talk a wee bit about that. Gary McDowell, how good was Mader's movement playing the centre forward role? Definitely a backup for centre forward. I think the big thing, and I'm going to throw this out to the commenters either watching live or later on today, is the performance of Dyson Mader going to result in us not buying that third choice striker? And going back to something that Acsom says, if that is the case, surely it makes another winger more of a priority, one or the other, I think would be the solution to that. Let us know in the comments. Acsom, let's have a wee chat about Brendan then. I mean, box office, Brendan is back. Yeah. It becomes frustrating as a fan, and we actually spoke about it on the Friday, strangely enough, Brian and I just wish the club would come out and put this one to bed, And whilst we were on live, Celtic made a very brief statement about the ticket situation, and you thought, all right, generic, but at least they did it. Brendan went a stage further. Yeah. He was absolutely tremendous, wasn't he?
Oh, brilliant! I thought he nailed it. He kind of got the tone perfect. And the thing is, he didn't bring it up. He was obviously asked about it, but it was like he was prepared. He knew every kind of tone he wanted to hit, and everything he said was bang on. I think it gave us that clarity as well for those that needed it. I think we all were perfectly aware of the situation, but for those in the media or those that aren't as clued up, they might have thought this is just a two-way thing. But as he quite clearly stated, being a Celtic thing, this whole thing started because they couldn't handle the celebrations that were going on every time that Celtic would go there and win. And it's been their issue ever since. And it's not a case of Celtic even just playing tit for tat. We've got to protect our supporters. We've got to make sure it's a fair situation. And none of this is Celtic's doing. And it's good that was put out there in such a way from the manager, because I do think that gets muddied sometimes where, anyone looking out would just be like, yeah, it's both clubs just basically, ruining the fixture or not allowing fans. But I think it's clear to go into the reasons why. And again, as to why we've made the decision we have for the upcoming fixture. It's perfectly clear. We've stood up to the agreement. We've made sure from our end that all the boxes have been ticked. We've made the necessary, taken the necessary measures for safety. And obviously if that their end, then of course we're not going to give them tickets, and I think that's only the right and fair.
I remember when we were talking about it on the socials, and you get this influx of people that are trying to defend what Rangers are doing, and they do, as you say, from the outside looking in, tend to just lump us into the same bracket. Acsom, and there was a whole list of incidents that showed how fans were unsafe inside Ibrox, and it was broken glass on the park. It was physios getting hit with glass bottles. It was pundits not being able to actually do their commentary from Ibrox, etc. And it went on and on and on. And then at the weekend, we see another incident at St Johnstone, where one of their liaison officers is attacked, and it's captured on film. And now St Johnstone fans are demanding that their club don't let Rangers fans in. So it's not, as Brendan Rodgers said, this is not a Celtic thing. This is a Rangers thing. I thought he was brilliant. He looked right down the lens, and it was box office Brendan once again. Now, Daniel F. Daniel, you're a very regular contributor to Acsom. It's always great to see your points coming up. And when we're talking about wingers, I guess this leads on from the Maida question. If Maida's going to be the third choice, let's say, then you do need to strengthen maybe around the wing. So let's have a wee chat about that. Kuhn is looking good. Forrest is about to make his 500th appearance, which is absolutely tremendous. He will be the 13th player in that list of players in Celtic's history to have made 500 or more. And Daniel F. comes in to say, stop lumping Palma in with Yang. Palma should have 2 Champions League goals under his belt. He's had 2 injuries as well. He's a player and will come good with a good run. Now, Yang and Palma, the only thing I guess I could lump them in with is the fact that they are currently the backup wingers. But I agree with Daniel in that I think Palmer's done more. I think he has contributed more than Yang. But I'm not sure. I'm on the fence in relation to whether or not he's got a future. I don't know what Brendan Rodgers thinks of the player. And I know we've seen a couple of wee snippets where he's given him the big praise and all that when he was being interviewed in Spanish. Maybe just an opportunity for Brendan to remind us all that he can speak the lingo.
Of course.
Better than I can speak French. But I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me if either of the guys were sold. And by the way, I agree with Daniel. I think that Palma has made a contribution.
Yeah, Palma's 100% undeniably done more than what Yang has. He scored more goals and assists. He scored in the Champions League, almost got 2. There's no denying that. I think where I'm grouping them together more is in terms of consistency and unreliability at the moment to provide consistent week-on-week performances. That's where I would put them 2 in the same bracket. In recent times, haven't shown enough for us to be confident that when they come into the team, we're going to get a good, reliable performance from them. So that's my concern there. There may still be a player in there, but yeah, it's he started pre-season pretty well. I thought he's done okay in some of the games he's came on. Yesterday was, there was a couple of chances where he missed one where he could have maybe played someone in or made sure and got the goal. His first touch, the ball went out of play. I think it's just stuff like that gets frustrating, but that can happen to anyone. So I'm not basing it on that. It's just over a more prolonged period now, we've not really seen the best of him. Still, maybe acclimatising. We've seen that with Kuhn. We've seen that with other players. It takes them a bit of time. But where I group both of those is where I feel like right now is a noticeable drop-off in quality when the starting 11 wingers come off and then we see the 2 of them come on. It's not really got that same fluidity. Now, we all know that we've seen it last year. He's not got the most, he's not blessed with the most pace. So we know, I've thought maybe we could try him more centrally. But I don't think that's where Rodgers sees him. Otherwise we would have seen him there. So I think if we are persistent with him as a winger, it does just slow us down, I feel like, because he's one of those players, he takes a few touches, cuts inside. He's a bit similar to Haksabanovic in that sense. Whereas I think right now what's making us so difficult to play against is how quick. So yeah, it remains to be seen how important a player he's going to be, or whether he's just in the squad right now because we've not got alternatives.
When I look at the squad, actually, I think of Maeda, Forrest and Kuhn as kind of being like your first choice wingers. 2 of those 3 are on the wing. And then your backups at the moment, I think, are Palma and Yang. And I was pulled up the other week there for saying I hadn't mentioned Johnston. I don't think... I know. Sorry, Mikey. He was injured, obviously, at the weekend. But I don't think I don't think Mikey's in the plans. I really don't.
I heard Rodgers' comments. I think it was when they asked him about the injury, and then I think he was asked what's the plans for him, and even that Rodgers didn't seem like it was he's here and he's going to work to get him. It sounded more like we'll see what happens. Mikey wants game time as well. It just, for me, I'd be quite frustrated if he's still here for both the player and for us if he's still here at the end of the window, because I think it'll do him wonders going out and just getting game time. We've seen that when he was at West Brom. And I think as well, just from the Celtic support, he's here again and he starts getting used, it'll just cause that kind of same expectancy and then same frustrations when the inevitable seems to happen. By the sounds of it, I think Rodgers is in agreement as well that I think for all parties concerned, it'll probably be best if he moves on. But yeah, I think even for Yang, I think the way we've done with Kwon, I think if we can get another winger in loan, playing at maybe one of these other SP, I think he's good enough to play for some of these other teams in the league, where there's going to be less pressure on him to perform week in, week out. He can really get acclimatised, and then it leaves a space open for us to get another winger. As you said, we've got 3 right now that we're quite comfortable with. You bring in a 4th. And then you've got Palmer supplemented in there for any injuries or be in a better position. And then it allows Maida, if need be, to play up front, where if required as well, and we're not short in that position.
You'd feel so much better if that was the situation. Yeah. I think when I look at Adam Maida, by the way, I'm not comparing them as players, but the situation that Maida was in when he came to Celtic on loan is he's a guy that's come through the ranks at Norwich. You've seen the reaction of some of the Norwich fans. If he was to leave, they were fine with that kind of thing, And he comes to Celtic and he is instantly, embraced by Celtic fans, and he does so well for us. And then we're all dying to sign him. And I thought it was a wee bit similar with Mikey coming through the ranks. Nobody's that bothered if he leaves, right? No disrespect, I'm generalising here. He goes to West Brom and he has a brilliant loan period. And the thing that hasn't happened is that follow-up bit where he actually goes and makes it permanent. And I know that West Brom won't be signing many, if any, players because of their financial situation, but I thought it would have led to a move. And I think that's what you're talking about. You feel a bit exasperated as a fan. You think, are we here again and we're still talking about this? Because that should have been the inroads for him to move on, I thought.
And West Brom are one of the more were one of the more fancied teams in that league. Other clubs in that kind of position. I think in one of the comments there, someone mentioned Norwich. But yeah, Norwich, there's plenty of clubs that could do with the contribution that if Mikey Johnson can carry that form on that he did for West Brom, he can do that for plenty of those clubs. I don't know what the stumbling block is there, because is it him or is it a money thing? I don't know. I've been surprised a Championship club. Maybe in the last week of the window when things are getting a bit more desperate, we'll see that. But I just think that move was so good for him that it'd be silly for him not, for his own career now, to try it again and try and get a good full season playing regular football at one of the higher end Championship sides.
No, I agree with you. £2.5 million, £3 million, something like that. On you go.
It was loud, and there was a good crowd yesterday as well. I've got to say, you compare that to another crowd in Glasgow the day before, over 50,000. It filled up pretty nicely. Really good atmosphere and a right rapturous reception for Ida when he came on. And yeah, it was good to see him. Obviously, didn't kind of get any chances or anything, but yeah, he put himself about. Again, you see that physicality that he brings. A couple of shoulder barges, winning the ball back. Touch was a bit, rusty at times, but that'll come. So yeah, really excited to see what he can do. But it was good to see such a good reaction, and the fans were in good spirits.
It was, because I think historically you could look at that first game in the League Cup, obviously with it not being on the season book, and some of the attendances have been pretty poor over the period of time. But that takes me back again. Sorry to please indulge me. It takes me back to a couple of things that were said about the Celtic crowd, and it wasn't just to get a cheer from the audience, but Lubo Moravcik was talking about the fact that Lubo now, he doesn't want to work in football because he enjoys the quiet life. He likes going to the beach. He likes playing golf. He's so laid back. It's frightening, right? He said, initially when he retired, he thought maybe I could go into coaching. He goes, I got my first coaching job at 42, turned up at training, he goes, and I was still the best player. So, yeah, he says he was back home in Slovakia. He was reading a newspaper and there was some big gig happening in Slovakia. And it was like, you know, he can't remember who the band were. And it was in front of 70,000 and they were banging on about this. And he was like, I used to play in front of 60,000 every fortnight. I mean, what's all the big hullabaloo here? And then Mialbi came out and said something along the lines of, and somebody out there would need to check this, he thought like he's the lowest attendance he had ever played in front of at Celtic Park was still over 50,000. And it's sensational that somebody can come to our club and go away, and that's been their experience. So you're right, as the late great Tommy Byrne said, and he was spoken about last night, we're there and we're always there, and we were there at the weekend. Colin Sweeney, great to see you. Thanks for getting involved. The midfield three are solid. Let's hope we can keep them together. I'm going to cling on to that hope until anything different happens.
Well, here's a question for you, Paul John, then. What do you think our squad is going to look like come the 1st of September?
Right, I think we will get a left back in, but I think it will be a loan. And like you said before, a loan to buy, happy with that. We need a centre-half, no doubt about it. And I think Scales has been one of the greatest kind of stories coming through and doing what he's done after being written off. But I am looking at the 8 games in Europe and I'm thinking that let's try and get somebody in there who's on a level with Carter Vickers, who, by the way, I don't think he's had a brilliant start to the season, but we know what he can do. Bring someone in at centre-half. It seems obvious, but they 2 positions are a must. Matt O'Reilly. And this isn't just me, right? Because he's a sensational player. I don't think he's going to go unless the club's right for him. So Atalanta come in. I don't know why Congerton didn't just phone Rodgers and say, how much do you want for him? Rather than go through this drama.
Is Congerton at Atlanta?
He's at Atalanta, yeah.
Aye, that's
bizarre,
right,
isn't it? Just phone Brendan and it's like, look, don't put in another bid unless it's this. You know what I mean? Unless someone can tell me that he's left in the last wee while. So I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put it out there, and some people might think it's just wishful thinking. Matt O'Reilly will still be a Celtic player when they line up to play Rangers. I'm just going to put it out there, right? And then I think we're going to sign a winger. We'll sign a winger rather than a forward. That's my kind of take on it. So how many? 3 new additions. Keep Matt O'Reilly. Maybe still a wee bit short, but I'll be much happier.
Will you be happy with that?
Yeah. What about yourself?
I definitely think we'll get a left back in. I agree it'll be a loan. I think we'll get a centre back in. Maybe again a loan. I think we'll get a winger in. So the 3 I agree with. I think Matt O'Reilly will go pretty late in the window. Movement within some of the European clubs, which will open up a space. But then I think we will buy another midfielder. I think we've obviously been linked with Arne Engels last week. And then there was another midfielder, can't remember the name, but I think if Matt O'Reilly goes, I think we will buy another midfielder, and that'll be 4. I would have ideally liked a midfielder regardless. I still think we're one short in there. Awata's not featured at all yet.
No.
So you wonder how far out the picture he is. And then Odin Holmes, the other one, I still think we're short. I think we could do another one. But I think we'll see 4 players come in. Left back, centre back, winger, and I think we'll get a Matt O'Reilly attempted replacement because, my God, it's going to be hard to replace him.
You're right.
I'd love to be wrong, and I don't think it's a given. I think we're at that stage where quite conceivably, the right club won't come in for him. And I agree with you. I don't think he'll go to a Southampton or a Leicester or something like that. I think it will be an Atalanta or better. I think it'll be a Champions League club if he does go. And the hope is that nobody does come in for him of that caliber, and he sees that he's got a good season ahead of him here, potentially at Celtic playing at Champions League level. We all spoke about it. With a few additions, we can aim to try and get through this league phase. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that can happen. And then he can have his pick of the bunch. But I know it doesn't always work like that, and I wouldn't begrudge him a move. But I just hope if he does go, I hope it's not to a downward step such as Southampton's or Leicester's or something like that.
I think the key thing from what you said there is it's a Champions League club. And I think in his mind, why would he leave a Champions League club to go to some other team who are not at that level? So I think that's a great point. It may seem obvious, but it's a great point. Davy Fitzpatrick, you're on the Facebook. I brought this up to prove that we're not just bringing up the YouTube comments. Priorities are left back, centre back, midfielder, as Matt O'Reilly's most likely away. Winger only after these three are in. I don't disagree with you. And Mr. Whip comes in. Was a season ticket holder during the Lubo years. Unforgettable. Yes, we love a hero at Celtic. We absolutely do. Is Dara O'Shea that centre half? William B, I'd take him. He's got the same.
I'd take him. Yeah.
Same agent as Ida. By the way, sometimes these things can work in your favour. He's got the same agent as well. And Christie says that he would have Starfelt back. I'm going to leave you with one final question. Leave your comments on this one, right? We're going into the Champions League. Now, Celtic Park, Parkhead, Paradise. That's the three names that I think are acceptable to refer to our stadium. We're in the modern age. I remember like putting a sponsor on a Celtic jersey back in the day was seen as sacrilegious. People would write to the Celtic View and say they'll never be back in Celtic Park where we have a sponsor on the hoops. But it's now the norm. It's been normalised, and normalisation for a club in the Champions League might actually be deemed to have a stadium sponsor. Imagine Celtic were to sell the sponsorship rights for the stadium going into the Champions League games, make top dollar. We don't need the money, I hear you say, but that money was then reinvested either in the stadium or in the team. Would you be up for it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. I think it's an interesting discussion point. Every Monday, we gauge the mood. Myself and Acsom will be doing just that. I think we'll get one more Monday in before the transfer window shuts.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And we will be talking about it next week. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. One last thing. You might see from time to time Acsom mentioning the fact that we've won a few awards, national awards over the years, half a dozen of them, in actual fact. They're on the shelf. You can't see them because they're glass. They're on the shelf behind us. Football content awards, football blogging awards. We have won 6 over the last 6 years, I think. So we are up for a few others. If you want to nominate, today is the final day that you can nominate. What I've done is I've put the link underneath the video. If you enjoy what we do, either with the bulletins, with the live events, or with This Is Acsom on a Friday night, give us a wee vote. And we will go down and hopefully bring an award back. I'm not sure what it is this year, actually, but we'll find out soon enough. And if you want to come and see Charlie Mulgrew and Paddy Mullane at Gracie's, there are 20 tickets left. The link is under the video. Thanks for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.